as most of you, if not all of you, will already know, Cyberpunk 2077 is an upcoming game to be released in about 2 or 3 weeks by CD Projekt Red. It's the first non-Witcher game that they've made. And all of those have been getting steadily better. And with the setting and with a few other features, there's been a lot of hype and excitement about Cyberpunk 2077, not least from this channel here. So we wanted to talk about how good do we think it actually is going to be. A bit of a mini preview and what really to expect from it. Should we sort of lower or rein in our expectations a little bit, and early sort of predictions for some of it. So we might get stuck straight in there then, and to say that the release now is firmed up finally, and it's going to be on the 19th of November. So enough time before Christmas that some people might need to save up a little bit and get it for Christmas. Some people, it'll be fine. Maybe they'll get a sale in the Black Friday sales, but this person over here will definitely be getting it on launch day. I think it's safe to say we're pretty excited. I think it's safe to say there's not been many games to come out over the years that we've been more excited about, say for perhaps The Witcher 3 and GTA 5. There's other games that we've been excited about, but in terms of the level, this is pretty up there. I have a question for you. How excited were you when the E3 launch happened and Keanu Reeves was both featured at the end of the trailer and then came out on stage?
It's definitely hard to put it in perspective, but it's something that has never really happened before on a game that I've been excited for, where they've really gone so hard on the marketing that it's gotten not just like us gamers excited. Like I don't think there's a single person who's like fully into games that isn't at least a little bit excited for Cyberpunk. But it's also gotten mainstream attention, which I think is really, really crazy. Like there's a lot of people I know in real life who don't really play video games that much, who are very much like on the radar of Cyberpunk now, and they know it exists and are at least considering looking into it, just because of the fact that how much hype the game has started to generate due to that initial E3 sort of reveal or trailer rather, and moving on with all the other marketing that they've started doing that's just continuing to sort of ramp up the hype.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely permeating across, like you say, into mainstream. I mean, look at Elon Musk's Cybertruck. If that's not a nod to some of this, then I don't know what is. I think that it's we've already mentioned at length on this channel that, I mean, for me personally anyway, Cyberpunk is my favorite genre out there. What they do in the genre is generally, I think it's probably the most important genre for us to know about. And I think that the previous track record of this developer, whilst it's only been essentially that one series of games, they had steadily become, especially by the third one and the 2 DLCs that came out for it, probably the best. That's probably the best game of all time, in terms of size, graphics at the time, and everything else, everything, soundtrack going into it. And it's certainly, I think, the highest rated game on our channel so far. So should we keep our expectations low? I really want to say we should, because everything is better if you keep it lower, but I really find it hard to follow that advice myself. So I'm going to say no. Let's not keep our expectations low. Let's hold this to the highest level of expectation we possibly can.
I actually agree. I think it's really easy to say that we should temper our expectations, and I think to some extent, of course, we should. We shouldn't expect and we shouldn't expect like the greatest game that's ever been released for all time, like for forever. But
just for the record, that's exactly what I'm expecting.
Yeah, but definitely I'm close to that. I think there's just so many things going into it that are hard to ignore. Like every time I sort of try to like switch my brain off to it and just like wait and just pass the days until it comes out, I can't. There's always something else. Like, for example, they keep dropping these Night City Wire episodes, which I know a lot of people probably don't keep up with, but I definitely have been watching them, not live, but after they come out, I usually just stick them on. and there's just so many like different details that it's just there's so much effort going into this game. CD Projekt Red are really like, I feel like they're really trying to make this like a one up to The Witcher, and that's already quite possibly the greatest game ever made. Um, so it's really hard not to expect the world from this game, and I'm starting to get to the point where I am kind of expecting the world, and I'm not too keen to force myself to reel that in. I think we should hold it to a really high standard and expect the game to be very close to, if not a perfect 10 out of 10.
I'm just going to read a paragraph that's on the Wikipedia page that,
Yep.
if it doesn't settle you on a lot of this, then it should. So, it says Cyberpunk 2077 is based on Mike Pondsmith's Cyberpunk franchise. Pondsmith started consulting on the project in 2012. He also appears in it as a character. His follow-up to Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk Red, made an impact on the lore. Cyberpunk 2077 drew its influences from the 1982 film Blade Runner, manga and anime series Ghost in the Shell, and video games System Shock, which is the precursor to Bioshock, and Deus Ex. It features a motorbike from the Akira manga, an anime film, and a car inspired by Mad Max Fury Road. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt composer Marcin Przybylowicz wrote the score, along with P.T. Adamczyk and Paul Leonard Morgan. Songs for in-game radio stations were especially made. Refused created music for the group Samurai, and Grimes voices the frontwoman of Lizzie Wizzy and the Methadwarves. Run the Jewels, A$AP Rocky, Gazelle Twin, Ilan Rubin, Richard Devine, Nina Kravitz, Deadly Hunter, Ratboy, and Tina Guo also contributed. In July 2018, actor Keanu Reeves was approached for the role of Johnny Silverhand, codenamed Mr. Fusion, to maintain secrecy. He would lend his likeness to, voice, and do motion capture for the character. Reeves' dialogue amount is second only to that of V. Having first spent 15 days recording his lines, Reeves was later granted his request that Silverhand's screen presence be doubled. Masane Tsukiyama portrays Arasaka Corporation leader Saburo Arasaka. Sebastian Stepien served as head writer and creative director before leaving for Blizzard Entertainment in early 2019. In October 2020, Cyberpunk 2077 was released to manufacturing. Okay, so what does that mean? What does all of that paragraph mean? If that doesn't get your blood stirring, I don't know what will, because all of those influences and things they took in are things that I actually like. Who doesn't like Blade Runner? Who doesn't like Ghost in the Shell if you've seen it? I mean, I'm not talking about even the Scarlett Johansson one, which actually aesthetically was probably the most beautiful film ever made. I actually think the Hollywood Scarlett Johansson Ghost in the Shell might be more beautiful than Avatar. Wasn't as good as the animes though, and that's for sure. System Shock, if you ever played it, is pretty awesome. It's a bit old now, but if you go and look at some of these old videos and understand the story behind it, it's pretty amazing. And again, who doesn't like Deus Ex, especially the two on this channel here? And then Akira, we talked about Akira and the motorbike feature, and that is pretty incredible. And Mad Max Fury Road is also pretty good. So there's a lot that have gone into this. The guy that, again, like they did with the Witcher games, they started out with the actual creator of the original world, the original IP, if you like. So it's not a case where they're making it up as they go. They've worked with someone that created it, and they've been working with him since 2012. That's 8 years. The last game that I know of that took that long to come out was the first Halo game.
And we all know how hyped that ended up being, don't we?
That game changed games forever.
Yeah.
And I think this game could do the same. So
yeah, I think in this case, especially like with The Witcher, obviously they worked with Andrzej Sapkowski, with obviously a little bit in terms of like The Witcher lore. But I think in that case, he definitely took a step back, and I think CD Projekt Red kind of took the reins a lot more. I think in this case, almost every creative decision has at least been run by Mike Pondsmith to see if he would be able to see it in his world. And so I think that just means that everything in terms of lore, in terms of visuals, everything has kind of gotten a creative thumbs up from him. So honestly, like, we're getting like a very pure vision, I think, of what Cyberpunk and Mike Pondsmith's version of Cyberpunk is meant to be. So I think this is going to be one of the most in-depth sort of game universes we're ever going to see.
Well, also in terms of everything else, the Funko Pop company, the one that does the little bobblehead
Yeah,
things that everyone has something of, they've already released some for this game.
yeah,
Um, there was the World of Cyberpunk 2077, a 192-page art book published by Dark Horse Books on 29th of July. Um, Dark Horse also brought out the first issue in a comic book series called Cyberpunk 2077 Trauma Team earlier this year. They held a cosplay. CD Projekt Red held a cosplay competition from June to October the last year or so. There's a card game that's um, coming out this year. McFarlane Toys is going to be releasing toys and action figures for it. There's a Cyberpunk 2077 themed Xbox One X and controller, which I tried to buy but was sold out, unfortunately. There's obviously extra DLC for that as well, and it's the final limited edition of that console too, which is pretty awesome. There's a lot more stuff like paraphernalia and all the rest of it. But also, here's a big one: is Cyberpunk Edgerunners is an anime spin-off which is produced by Studio Trigger and it's scheduled to premiere on Netflix in 2022. So there's a whole ream of stuff around it which is going to build into it. And if it's anything to do with, if it's anything like GTA 5, that was a game that came out in September 2013, and they're still doing new stuff on their online servers, this year. So it's a game that can live for a long time as well, which is, if it's done right, if it's done well, and it's given the attention it needs. I think this might be one of the most important games ever to come out, to be honest. And
yeah. There's a really high chance it completely changes like the landscape of how games are going to be.
well, I think The Witcher 3 did that. What RPGs have come out since?
Well, yeah, even the ones that have definitely taken a lot of their inspiration from The Witcher 3, knowing that it works so damn well. And I think this might be the same situation where, not just in terms of like actual in-game content, but in terms of CD Projekt Red's business model. So, for example, the way they handle DLC. Obviously, everybody knows that The Witcher 3, the two major DLCs with Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, two of the best DLC ever added to a game. They obviously really took the time to make them worth the money that you pay for them. And if Cyberpunk 2077 does the same thing, but with this much mainstream traction and I guess like popularity, there's a pretty high chance that that type of business model might even ripple into other companies later when they realize that actually that's a really successful way to keep it going. So I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways that this game could ripple into the community and change the sort of landscape of video games.
Well, I think that the Witcher series on Netflix, for example, could only happen because of the popularity of the Witcher games, which really, the Witcher games brought them into a Western audience. And, the first Witcher game came out before there was even an English translation of the books.
Yeah.
And that tells you a lot. And, I think that, looking at this, and this game, Cyberpunk 2077, has already won awards. It's not even out yet, It's crazy. And I think that, to ask we had to ask the question: should we lower our expectations? And as I said, I say absolutely no in this case. To keep them high, and if you get disappointed, then that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to be disappointed because it just means that you really wanted it to be really good. The expectation level: do we expect this to be better than anything that's ever come out? Maybe, because it's also the newest thing that's ever coming out, so it should be, right? It should be better graphics. There should be more adventurous. It should have more. It should have learned some of the lessons from others. How good do we think it's really going to be? I don't know. That part's hard to tell. But if it's half as good as The Witcher 3, it's already better than most games out there.
Yeah, it really will be. I think there's a really high chance it's going to at least hit that mark. But I think in terms of a number, I'm really, really hoping that we at least get a 9 out of 10 here. I'm really hoping for another game that can sort of top our personal rankings and remain sort of like one of the highest rated games that we can possibly give. Obviously, the mainstream sort of like reviewers are always going to end up being 9s out of 10s and 10s out of 10s. But I think, in our case, I think we're usually fairly harsh on games. And I'm just really hoping that even with our own sort of critical eye, I'm really hoping that this game hits at least a 9 out of 10 and really that's something that we'll have to come back on when the game's like released. We'll definitely come back and do a proper review after we've both played it.
There'll be lots of videos on this game from our channel. Don't worry,
100%.
there'll be lore videos. There'll be, all kinds of videos, I think. And so, we're hoping to do a lot of content for this game. We hope that the content will be mostly positive. I don't see any signs so far that it won't be. And CD Projekt Red, I think, have been very respectful of their fans and the people they're making the game for over the years. And, we did do a video, back when, because it was originally slated for, I think, was it March or April release?
Yeah.
And then they moved it to September very early on, and then they moved it again. And we did a quick video on that and actually said about how that could be a good thing. Like it was. I don't think it was delayed because of COVID. I think it was delayed because of wanting to make sure the game was good. And so none of this like EA style get the game out unfinished and then release patches and DLCs later on. No, it was we're going to release it when it is ready to be released, and I like that.
Yeah, I do as well, and I think there has been a little controversy a little bit recently, just because of I think CD Projekt Red are doing a little bit of crunch to make sure that they hit that deadline. But I think, again, I think that's kind of what you're in for in the games industry at the moment.
I'm going to go on record as to say that there's actually nothing wrong with. There's not a huge amount wrong with crunch. It's not a business model, but there's nothing wrong with having crunch from time to time. Lots of businesses do it. You work in retail, you're going to have crunch at Christmas time. You work in certain jobs, you're going to have crunch. That's actually what happens. It's called working hard. Actually, it's sometimes what it is, and being proud of your work. And most of the people that criticize crunch, I actually will say this right now without getting too controversial, is most of those people don't know how to work hard at all, because they've spent their whole life trying to get an easy job because they've done an easy degree. But that's a whole nother video. So I don't mind that. That wasn't controversial to me personally. And the other controversies that we've had came from similar sort of people that seem to be opposed to these sort of games, which are games that don't pander to them and games that do their own thing. And there seems to be particularly two game devs now that have come against it all the time. And that's Rockstar and CD Projekt Red. And so that's one of the reasons why I hold them both up as the two best game devs currently around. They don't release games every 5 minutes, and they don't pander to people, that I don't think you should pander to, because in 5 years' time, those people won't give a shit and would have bought the game in the first place. So I'm excited. We'll probably just finish off with this section, which is what should you expect from this game, and could it be fair to say that you should expect sort of like a Witcher 3 size and input, but in a cyberpunk setting? Is that kind of a fair comment?
Yep, I think it is. They've obviously stated that in some aspects, the game will be shorter than The Witcher. So, like in terms of story length, it's a little shorter because they obviously they were saying that they wanted to. That, like their biggest complaint of The Witcher, I think, was that a lot of people didn't complete the entire story. So they made this one a little shorter, just with more variance in the actual quest. So obviously,
how
more
can you
reason
not
to
complete
replay
the
it.
entire story? I think I've played through 3 times, including both.
Yeah. I know, but in terms of just raw statistics, I think that a lot of people didn't finish The Witcher 3.
So that's on them. That's on them. Why wouldn't you complete the best game that's ever been made?
I don't know, but yeah. So they are sort of trying to adjust certain things, but I think in terms of general size and scope, I think the game will absolutely should be expected to at least be equivalent to The Witcher 3, if not better.
Yeah, and I think Night City is going to be the most vibrant setting that a game's ever had. There's going to be, I think, some inevitable comparisons that certain sections of people might make, maybe with some more mainstream gamers, as what always happens when you're in a modern / futuristic setting, open world, is that there's going to be comparisons to a certain Rockstar game. We'll straight away say that don't ever listen to those comparisons. It's completely different. So I think what you can expect is a big story with a lot of choices, a lot of different options, and a lot of different ways to get to each bit. We already know that you can choose to join different factions. For example, we already know that you can choose to be male or female and all the rest of it. So there's going to be a lot of choices, and I think there's going to be real character and story-driven content with this open world freedom to explore a place that they said that something like maximum was 20% of some of the stuff is procedurally generated, as opposed to manually. So there's going to be a little bit of that for, I guess, for size and all the rest of it. But actually, I think that good 80 to 90% of this is going to be completely unique, explorable, interactable stuff. So, yeah, like I said, what we can expect to me, or what it might be like, is probably the biggest, the most adventurous undertaking of a game ever. But actually, with some backing behind it, unlike, for example, a No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I think definitely the majority of the game is handcrafted, so I think definitely keep expectations high on that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm certainly really excited, and if I carry on talking now, we'll be talking forever. So, do you have anything you want to say before we probably come into land?
Nope, I think we're definitely ready to just come into land, and I think with only about a month to go for Cyberpunk, it's time to, I guess, just sort of pass away the days until we can finally get our hands on the game and really see just how good it really is.
Yeah, and I guess as Johnny Silverhand himself says, "Wake the fuck up, samurai! We've got a city to burn."